Hey guys, it's Troy, and I wanted to share with you one of my additions that I've really been enjoying to my collection. I'm one of those guys who I enjoy some of the obscure pens, not just new ones, not just vintage, but I also enjoy pens that you don't normally see. I also enjoy pens that won't cost you an entire paycheck, or ones that you will never be able to afford. That's not to slam anybody else. I mean, there are some pens out there that I see reviewed that I'm drooling over. There's a couple right now I'm going, I want. But I do like pens that most people aren't going to review, or even own, for that matter. So I got one of those, and when I get something like this in the mail, and it comes from St. Petersburg, Russia, I go, ooh, it must be one of my new former communist bloc pens. This one is a Soviet Union 1950s era Soyuz pen that is a kind of a Parker knockoff, if you will, and it was made in the famous Leningrad factory, so I'm told. So it came inside of that package, this wrapped paper with Cyrillic packing tape on it. Was actually just 3 sheets or 3 pieces of styrofoam, and you can see that they carved out a little piece, and in that little hole sat this pen right here. So this is the Soyuz Soviet Union 1950s pen that I got, and I have been using this a lot since I got it. It has been a go-to pen on my desk for a little while now, and I have been enjoying it. There's some things I love about it, and there's 1 or 2 things that I'm not a big fan of, but I still overall really like the pen. So I'm going to show you a couple things about it. First, I don't know if you can really see it, but there on the clip there's some Russian writing. Now I'm told what that says is Soyuz, which from what I understand is Russian for Union. So, you know, I wish I spoke Russian or knew more about Russian culture and language. You know, when you think about Soyuz, when you hear that term, I'm thinking, you know, the rockets that are still going up for the Soviet Union. So this is what it's like on the finial here. It's just a gray pen, silver band here, and then you've got the plastic down to the blind cap, and underneath that blind cap, which I just dropped but is on my keyboard, is this little filling plunger, similar to what you are going to see, let's say, on my Parker Vacuumatic. So if I wanted to use it, you could see that on that you've got the little plastic plunger. So if you're familiar with having to fill these, then you're familiar with having to fill that one. Now, here's what I will say, is I picked up this for close to $100. You know, this was $20 plus shipping to get it here. Pull it off, and you've got what looks to be a very familiar style nib, hooded nib, if you are into Parkers at all. It's just a snap or slide-on cap. It doesn't seem to fit tremendously tight, but I haven't had any problems with this thing drying out yet at all. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't have any problems with it whatsoever. I had to flush it out because it had some kind of red ink residue that was in the pen, gave it a really good flushing, so I went ahead and filled it up with an ink of my choosing. I think I found one that I hadn't used yet and wanted to see how it wrote. So I got that. So let me compare it. For those of you who are familiar with, let's say, a Parker 51, let me just pull that off, and you know, you're probably familiar with the old style 1950s hooded nib. And let me pull off the back here. Same kind of filling system that I had on my Vacuumatic, and it's got the same Vacuumatic style filling system. Parker 21 here, a little different. Actually, wait a minute. It'd probably help if I grabbed actually the Parker 21, which I've got here. This is actually another Soviet pen that I had ordered previously and I've been trying to use and get to write. So the Soviets had been doing that kind of thing, but this is not a vacuumatic filler actually. This is one of the three that I've got. It's got a built-in converter. This converter doesn't come off. It's kind of built into the pen. So I actually had previously bought 3 different Soviet USSR surplus pens. I've shown these before, and I went ahead and went to go get this. So you can see how the difference in the size. Let me hold it up next to a Kaweco Sport so you can see how big it is. So this is actually almost a pocket pen. I'm not a fan of pocket pens. That's the one disappointment I had in this pen, because from the pictures you can't tell how big it is. I was thinking it was going to be more along, the size of my Parker 51. And I was thinking that would be awesome, and especially if it wrote well. Well, guess what? This one writes very well. It actually surprised me how well it did after I filled it, and it has been writing first time, every time, and smoothly since the time I filled it up and first put nib to paper. I've been happy with it. One of the things I do know, I paid $20 for this for retail, and I looked online just a little bit ago and they still had some available just like this, only they've upped the price by about $5. So, and I think they were charging almost $15 shipping to get it here from the former Soviet Union, from St. Petersburg, Russia. So anyway, little pen. It's nothing really pleasing to the eye. It's nothing special. I don't expect communist surplus pens actually to be anything special, just because I've never seen anything that was fantastic out of some of the the former Ruski pens that I've gotten. I've found stuff like this with the same kind of converter style I showed you on that green one. Then I've got this one, which is a little different style of a hooded nib. So 3 different Russian pens previously, one with a fully hooded, one with a semi-hooded, and one with a more of a traditional style nib. And then I've got this one with that nice fully hooded nib. So I'm not going to pull it apart. I'm not going to push the plunger and squirt ink everywhere. So, but if you're familiar with a vacuumatic, it took a little bit to fill it. With my vacuumatic from Parker, you could press, and then press, and press. The big difference, though, that you are going to see in this particular pen that I don't see in any of my Parkers, you see how it's got blue ink up in there? This actually will, when you're cleaning it out, I was cleaning out the red ink that was in it, the ink residue, and I could see the water come up in, and I could see the red tint to it, and then flush it out, and keep seeing it, and then suddenly I started getting clear water, and I wasn't getting anything else coming out of the pen, so then I started to fill it with blue. And depress, and next thing I know, I started to see blue start to bubble up in here, so I knew that I was getting a good fill. It has not run out of ink. As much writing as I've done with this thing, and I haven't been doing a lot of writing all at once. I've been doing a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit there, all day long and all night long, because I've been using this at work. And with the project I've been working on, I've been doing a lot more writing than normal, so I've been giving this little pen a workout. And the only problem I've got with it, like I said, you kind of have to write with it posted because it's so small. When I'm doing a lot of writing, let's say, and I'm going down a list, what I've been doing is keeping this and put it back in, pull it out, write, because I've been doing, like I said, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. Write something, a little jot, okay, put it back. Been doing it, little jot, put it back. So that's kind of how I've been using it for hours on end, and it's been doing great. Not the smoothest writer in the world, but actually writes fairly nicely. So let me show you some statistics so you can actually see how it writes. You can see, we'll do the writing sample, but I want to show you actually how big it is, and then I'll put these pens, I'll lay them out so you can have a good comparison. So we'll be right back. we're back. Now let's do a little size comparison. I already showed you, the Soyuz, and then I showed you the Parker Vacuumatic, but let's lay them out side by side so you can see the difference. And the Kaweco Sport, let's go ahead and move this down and put this right next to it. You can tell it's just a little longer than the Kaweco. Certainly is thinner. It's certainly thinner than the Parker Vacuumatic. Alright, now let's put down the Parker 51. You can see the difference in that. And here's my Parker 21. I don't have the 51 inked up yet. I don't have this one inked up yet. I don't have this one inked up yet. So let's see, I was going to show you maybe perhaps a nib comparison. So let's take these two out and let's show you a little bit about the nib. Some nibbage here and some nibbage here. So let's take a look. They're all very similar. Obviously you can tell that the inspiration for the Soyuz definitely came from the Parker design. And I'm not going to go dig out a wing sung and show you the newest, but I figured since we're talking about vintage pens, I would show you my vintage Parkers by comparison. So let's go ahead and put these down. Let's give you a little writing sample. Like I said, I can write like this. It's a little cramped to do that for me, so I personally like it posted. My wife didn't really like this pen because of its shortness. I didn't mind it quite as much. I was able to do it since I'm not writing with it, at least my usage thus far, for long periods of time. I could deal with it. So let's go ahead. I have the USSR, obviously the Soviet Union, 1950's Soyuz. And this one, I was told, came from the Leningrad factory. It's got a nice hooded nib. So when you've got a hooded nib, you shouldn't expect any real flexibility. You shouldn't expect a total huge amount of line variation. This nib seems to be like it would be a fine, but it actually gets a better line than a fine, so I'm going to call it a fine to medium nib on this one. It actually writes fairly smooth. You can hear a little bit of feedback. Fairly smooth. Not bad. I mean, definitely hear the feedback though. So let's see what you get for line variation. So you get a little bit. It writes good no matter what direction you're writing in. A few loop-de-loops. The reason I like to do these is because when I do my signature, that's how I start out my signature. So I've got the L with a loop on it. Let's just for grin see how it does for reverse. Writes surprisingly well to do reverse writing. You get a little finer line, but it holds up actually pretty good. So one of the first things I did on this pen was I checked its alignment. It looked good. Everything seemed good. Made sure it was good and clean. And what I did was I threw into it a... It'd help if I turned the pen the right way, wouldn't it? A Diatramentis Robert Louis Stevenson blue ink. Let's see how it does for wetness. I mean, actually it throws down a good wet line. So I have been impressed with this pen. Like I said, I've been giving this pen a good workout, and I'm surprised I haven't run it out of ink already because I've been using it a lot. And I mean, if you can hold a number 2 pencil, then you can hold this just fine. I've got fairly big fingers, fat fingers. I've got decent sized paws, but I can still hold this pen fairly well. If you're like me, and if you like the obscure, if you like the pen that's a little bit different to add to your collection, if you like to have something, I don't know about you guys, but living in America, I actually enjoy Russian surplus stuff. I've got a bunch of Russian surplus bolt-action rifles that I really, really enjoy. I enjoy former communist bloc stuff. I've got a drawer in my pen drawer right behind me where I've got a drawer called Commies, so old communist nation pens. So I actually do enjoy Soviet surplus stuff. And this one was a pleasant surprise. You can see, it's from the 1950s. You can see I've got some dings in it. There's some scratches on it, a little bit of character to it. I do expect that on a pen this old. It was used. It was not sold to me as new old stock. It was not sold to me as being brand new. It was sold to me as used. And, I may still buff this up a little bit. I may polish this thing up a little bit. So, make it look a little nicer, wax it, whatever. But I may give it some work. What you see is essentially exactly how it came to me. I haven't done any great work to this pen whatsoever outside of flushing it and filling it with an ink of my choice. So, there you go. My 1950s Soyuz Leningrad factory-produced vacuumatic style Soviet pen. And I'm liking it. I really am. So, this is going to be one of my go-to pens on my desk, I think, for quite some time.